Welcome everyone. This is our second annual Slipping into Spring knit-along. We do a 4-week knit-along with live videos every Friday at 5 p.m. but you can find those videos anytime after they air, and that will take us into the lovely season of spring. So today is week 1. So if you have not been following our knit-along posts, what we're doing is offering 2 different shawl patterns to choose from. It's never too late to join. There's no pressure to finish, at the end of the knit-along. It's just a fun way to stay connected near and far. So project number 1 is called Pressed Flowers. And what we're doing is utilizing the slip stitch, which is also called mosaic knitting. So you're going to learn a little bit about that if you haven't tried it before. And this is a 2-color shawl worked from the top down. I'll give you a close-up here. And it is worked on a 4mm needle. So that's a circular needle. And it has a pretty flower design which also resembles pansies. So the yarn that we've been offering for that project, actually there are 3 different offerings. Number 1 is Allegria, and that is a superwash merino. Very bouncy, very soft if you have sensitive skin, and it comes in semi-solid tones. You can see all of them across the front, and 2 different, that one has the microphone, 2 different variegated. So pretty purple with speckles, and a green, cocoa, cinnamon, yellow variegated. In the event page, Slipping into Spring Knit-along 2024, you'll see all the different colors. They're all posted there, and lots of inspiration project pics from knitters around the world who've already worked on this shawl project. The second option is Milo, and it's a gorgeous merino with linen. It does have a slight halo effect from the linen, and it is a sport weight, and that's actually the yarn I've chosen for the second project. So you'll see that up close. And the colors are a little bit more muted, desert tones. We have the natural oatmeal, aqua, charcoal, light coral, blush pink, lilac, silver gray, and this sandstone color. So to work on pressed flowers, you need 2 skeins 100 gram of the main and 1 skein of the contrast. 4mm needles, and I'm going to go over some of the tips and hints to get you started on that in a moment. And then the second shawl is called Artus. Artus is actually a word that means an extension of the body, which is a great name because when we wear a shawl, it is covering our limbs and our back and our shoulder, and it is like having an extension of warmth. So this one is a design by Moonstruck Knits. I'll put the links down below so you can read more about the designers and the details of the patterns. This is worked on 3.5 and 3.75mm. It's also top down. It's a nice large 69-inch by 28-inch shawl, and it is using 5 colors. So again, we've used the same yarns. You can use Allegria and choose 5 different colors that you like for contrast, or you can use the Milo and 5 different colors there. And then we've also offered the Estelle DK, which is an organic wool with I think 5% viscose, and it has tweed flex. So that has definitely stronger colors. So those are the yarn choices and basically the specs on the 2 designs. Some of you have chosen to knit both shawls. That's very adventurous. And some of you have chosen 1 shawl with an inkling to maybe knit the second shawl after the knit-along. Not too much pressure, of course. So it is important that you do your tension, because some of you who are loose knitters, we do recommend that you go to a smaller needle. In mosaic knitting or slip stitch knitting, you don't want to have a see-through texture. You want it to be firm yet not too dense. So I will show you what I've knit on Artus to this point. You know, I always like to be one step ahead of you knitters. And then we'll get into some of the techniques involved and reading the pattern. So if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the comments and I'll be happy to answer them. And if you stick to the very end, we're going to have our week 1 incentive trivia question. So for those of you who have signed up, you were given a ballot, which we filled in with your name in our ballot box. So that's the sign-up ballot towards the grand prize, and I'll show you the grand prize next week. And then each week you have an opportunity to win an incentive trivia ballot, and that gives you an extra chance to win. So after the 4th week of the knit along, we'll do a live draw and pick a winner. So this is Artus Shawl, and it is knit from the top down with a garter stitch tab that will block out much nicer. And this is all slip stitch knitting in here in the main color. And there you can see you have your center increase spine and increases at the beginning and end of the right side rows just within this nice garter stitch border. So at the moment I've finished the first section and I've used 1, 2, 3 colors, and I have 2 more to introduce from this point forward. So there's a very large mosaic technique border that will start on my next row. It's a very enjoyable knit. It is not too difficult, and it really doesn't take that long. So the main color section is worked on a 3.5 millimeter because I was able to get my gauge exact. And then these little stranded sections, which are 1 stitch in the color 2 and 1 stitch in the color 3, are worked on the 3.75. The reason that that is necessary is to create more stretch and it won't pucker. Because as you know, when we do color work, we tend to tighten up the stitches, so 1 size larger needle just helps. And then I do have a sample of the pressed flowers technique. Pressed flowers is a design by Amy Christophers. I'll put the link below. And she has worked it into a hat pattern, a cowl pattern, a shawl pattern, which we're featuring, and a cardigan and a vest. So it's the same technique, but different designs. So this is it on a hat. There you can see a close-up of the stitch detail. And all those pretty pansy flowers are created with slip stitches, not ferrule, so you're not going to get into a messy tangle of yarn. 1 row, 1 color. That's the rule for mosaic knitting. And then I also have a shawl, partially started here by one of our knit-alongers. She's local. And I can just give you a sneak peek of what you're in for. Has anyone cast on yet? So this is, again, top down for pressed flowers. 2 colors. She's worked through her first flower section, so again, it's too early to really see what's happening, but she's chosen that beautiful green variegated for the contrast and a medium chamois color for the main. This one starts with a provisional cast on, so I'm going to give you a link to a great video to show you how to do that. It's only 6 stitches, so you don't need to choose a complicated provisional cast on. This is the chain stitch or crochet version where you're knitting into the back bars of the stitch. It's going to be ripped out after and finished in a nice neat way. So don't worry about what color you use for your provisional. The only tip there for provisional is always use a yarn that is finer than your yarn or the same, not thicker, and something that has a bit of slide or slip to it so you can pull it out after without the yarn catching from stitch to stitch. So those are the 2 colors for this version of pressed flowers. It's going to be beautiful. I'll try to show you an update each week as she gets further into it. Hi, Catherine. Thanks for joining. Hi, Carol. Carol is all caked up and ready to go. I think a lot of us have got the yarn skeined, but are just waiting for the right day or maybe the weekend to get started, which is fine. So, let's see. Tension and needle size, very important. Okay, so I'll give you a little bit of background on mosaic knitting. For those of you who've never tried it before, it's a stitch or a technique that you're going to fall in love with, and you're going to wonder where it has been all your life. It has been around for a long time. It just really didn't become popular or trendy until the 60s, and that's when it was given the name mosaic knitting. Up until then, it was probably just called color work or slip stitch knitting. It didn't really have a category that it fit into. So what we love about mosaic knitting, it is the easiest type of color work knitting. It's easier than ferrule, it's easier than intarsia, it's easier than stranded color work. And it also uses far less yarn, because if you're thinking about the technique being slip stitch and knit or purl, if you're not knitting all your stitches or purling, then of course you're using less yarn. It's also quicker. It's the quickest form of color work, and it is less dense. So if you're doing a shawl entirely in ferrule or stranded work, you're going to feel like it's 2 layers thick. And if you're working it in slip stitch or mosaic knitting, it is lightweight. The slip stitches are allowing the air to flow through, and then you don't have a stitch at the back that's double thick. What else? 1 color is used per row. You're using less yarn, quicker to knit. Okay, so those are all the points to consider if you're going to start mosaic knitting on your first project. And shawls are always the easiest to start in mosaic knitting. They are primarily triangular, sometimes rectangular shaped, but it's something that you don't need to worry so much about the finished size. If you start mosaic knitting and jump right into a cardigan or a pullover, then you have the added stress of, is it going to fit me or the person I intend to knit it for? So what I can show you this week to get you started on Artus is the garter stitch tab. So that is something that we see more of now in shawl designs. Artus has a very long garter stitch tab. I think it's 30 rows long. We're used to maybe about 10 rows for most shawls. So I'll bring this up to the camera. And of course there's a quick way to count your rows. 2 rows equals 1 bar. So all you're doing to make 30 rows is counting 15 bars, and then you know at 30 rows. So when you finish the 30th row, you are not going to turn your work to the wrong side. You're at the end, you're at the left side, so all you're going to do is turn the work. So you're looking at the long side, and then you're going to work 1 stitch by picking up and knitting into each of these ridges or bumps. It's all programmed so that you can pick up the correct number of stitches without having to skip anything or fiddle around with it. So first bump is here, and I'm just going to go right under, and that's under both strands, and I'm going to knit through, and then I'm going to look for the next bump or the next ridge, and I'm going to lift the edge onto the needle and knit a stitch through. And I'm going to do that to the very end. That's going to give me the required number of stitches along the garter tab, and then they'll ask you to turn the corner. Don't turn to the wrong side of your work. It's all worked on the right side, and you're going to pick up and knit 3 stitches across your cast on edge, which is where you cast on your 3 stitches. So 1 for every stitch you've cast on, and then you're ready to turn your work and start working as the pattern requires, right side and wrong side. So that is the garter stitch tab for Artus. And as I mentioned, the cast on for pressed flowers is entirely different. It is a provisional cast on, so you do need a little bit of scrap yarn, and you will see the link below the video when it airs, and that will be a nice easy tutorial just to know how to pick up the stitches with your main color, or I think it is with the main color. Let me check. Yes, it is with the main color. And then don't worry, the provisional yarn will be pulled out after you finish, and there'll be a little finishing trick to do there too. We'll go over that. Okay, so Artus, beautiful Artus. One of the benefits of knitting Artus too is you don't need to worry too much about your color placement in the border until you get there. So I've picked these 5 colors, the 3 in the top, and then these 2, the sandstone and the sage green. But as I'm knitting with my main color and color 1 and 2, I have the option, if I want to switch around some of the colors as I get to the big border. Pressed flowers, you don't have that option. You have to be very definite about your colors from the very beginning, because as you can see, you're working both colors within the first few rows. So that's a very definite decision you need to make up front and be happy with your choice. I would say nobody has picked the same color combo in any of their shawl choices, which is a little bit extraordinary, but everyone seems very happy with the colors they've picked so far. I think we've only had 1 or 2 ladies who've come back and switched out a color before they started, and that's entirely up to you if you'd like to do that. Okay, back to Artus. So Artus is written directions to get you through what they call the waffle stitch. That's the main color pattern stitch with the slip stitch technique, and to get you through the color work bands, which are stranded knitting. And then when you finish the top half of the shawl, you're going to go over to the chart section. And if you have any problems with your site, please be sure to take your chart to a copy center so they can enlarge it for you and make it bigger and brighter and easier to read. So we do read right side rows always, right to left, wrong side rows, left to right. There are different ways you can keep track of your rows. You can highlight, use a highlighter to mark off each row as you do it. Or if you think you're going to use the pattern again, you can buy highlighter strips, and they will stick on each row as you do it, and they'll lift off and then re-stick on the next one. So that is a handy little trick. And you can see that the dark line, the dark box, highlights the repeat section. So this is showing you on the chart the first few stitches to start the row, and then you follow the repeat over and over, and then the last few stitches are shown at the end here. They've included the increases, and by the time you get to this chart, you already know what your increases are, if it's a right or left make one, and you know exactly where you're doing them. So you don't really have to pay attention to that. It's more about the colors, and the center of these diamonds are worked with right side and wrong side knit stitches. The rest of the stitches are worked in stocking stitch. So we won't get to the chart probably till next week or the week after. I would just concentrate on getting comfortable with the waffle stitch pattern, and then looking forward to doing the color work sections, which are only 4 rows at a time. The golden rule of knitting is slipping a stitch always purlwise. So that means you slip it as if you're going to purl, not as if you're going to knit it. Always slip a stitch purlwise in any pattern unless it is otherwise stated. So that is the same for both of these. And then the other thing to remember when you're doing Artus is the right side rows, when you are slipping a stitch, you must slip with the yarn at the back of the work. You don't want to see that little strand of yarn that's being slipped. And then when you're slipping your stitch on the wrong side of the work, you have to have the yarn in front of you because that's the wrong side. You don't want that little bar showing at the front. So that is something that confuses knitters from time to time. So that will get you going on Artus. And then Pressed Flowers has also written directions, I think for the first 24 rows. And if you're more comfortable with the written directions, that will certainly help you out. But she also gives you the chart as well. And when you get to the chart, it's a little bit small. I think I would enlarge that just so you can see her symbols. So if you enlarge that, make sure that you also copy the symbol section and paste it or tape it to the side of your chart. You don't want to be flipping back and forwards from page to page to refer to the symbols. So again, we read the charts from right to left. If it's a right side row, wrong side row is left to right, the opposite direction. Okay, so hopefully that will get you going this weekend. It's supposed to be kind of a cold day tomorrow in Muskoka. Very cold day. I don't know about you, but I will be knitting. So we've got our entry ballots in our ballot box, and now what we'll do is do week 1 incentive trivia questions. So feel free to post your guess or your best guess in the comments below, and we'll leave it open till tomorrow so the people who are watching the video tonight have a chance to participate, and then we'll pick a winner by Sunday morning, I guess, and that will be another ballot into the ballot box. So the question is, which professional knitter coined the term mosaic knitting? So we know that was coined in the 1960s, and she is a well-known knitter. She's an author, she's a feminist. So we want her name, first and last name if possible, and take a guess, or you can check with Mr. Google, Mrs. Google, and see what you come up with. So I hope your cast on goes smoothly today or tomorrow, and you get all your stitches on. And if you're interested in participating in the knit along, it's never too late. Just send a message or call the shop, and we'll get all your supplies ready for you. Thanks everybody for watching, and have a great weekend.